Hey everybody, it's me again, Mrs. Guzman, and I'm going to be talking about the impact of asynchronous development on gifted learners. Up next on Gifted Guzman. So in order to understand the impacts of asynchronous development, first you have to understand what asynchronous development is. Basically, what asynchronous development means is that a child develops cognitively very quickly and at a high level, while they develop socially and emotionally generally at the same level as their peers and sometimes below level from their peers because their cognitive reasoning is so high. So basically what this means in layman's terms is imagine you have a 5-year-old and they're getting ready to go to their first day of school. However, you have a gifted 5-year-old. So they've already read every Harry Potter book available. They've asked you to read things like Roots and Watership Down, but you've told them no because the content is not acceptable for a 5-year-old. But they're excited to go to school anyway and meet their peers. They want to talk about Harry Potter. They want to talk about Emily Dickinson. They want to talk about Robert Frost or Shel Silverstein. But when they get to school, they find out that all the other 5-year-olds want to talk about bubble guppies. Well, they don't understand bubble guppies. And so they don't know how to socialize with these 5-year-olds that they were so excited to go out and socialize with. And so they begin to remove themselves from that socialization, and they don't understand how to become part of that community because the things that they think about and the things that they want to learn about and the things that they already know are so highly advanced above their peers that they don't really know how to comprehend what their peers want and how to fit into that mold. So I'm going to show you a little clip of a video of an old television show. Take a look at this old television show and it should give you a little bit better idea of what asynchronous development looks like.
It's another day, another shift, another chance to prove to me that you're not just another screw-up. What do you say?
Doreen Cantor, I'm ready.
Charlie Morris, I'm ready.
Vinny Delpino, I'm ready.
Doogie Howser, I'm ready.
Hey, this guy want the 1 o'clock or the 4 o'clock?
What's that?
It's the secret goof-off schedule, see? Well, all of us take turns covering for each other. Well, you know, each of us get a little downtime in the storeroom. You know, so you can sleep, breathe, study.
Organized goofing off? You are accepting money to do this job. I'm sorry, but that shows a remarkable lack of integrity.
Yeah, well, there goes my nomination for the Supreme Court.
Double goof-off for me. He's my recruit.
Hey, Morris, get your butt out here. Guess what, Morris? I hired someone even stupider than you.
Oh, well, that's thoughtful.
Take Hauser's spot on drive-thru. Hauser, stay away from my customers. Hit the grill.
Ooh, the grill.
The grill, yes, sir.
Oh, now, welcome to my world, Hauser. Your CD is programmable, isn't it?
I'm walking out this door right now. Who's walking out with me?
Mahana doesn't pay for itself.
I'm being rent gouged by my own parents.
He's my uncle.
Hey, those CD players are pretty delicate. Be sure you pack her real nice with those styrofoam peanuts. Hey, you still got the original box?
All right, so that was a really cute little clip from a really long time ago of Neil Patrick Harris when he was a kid playing the part of Doogie Howser. If you've ever seen the show Doogie Howser, this is a gifted individual. He's a young man who is actually already a doctor. But he is trying to navigate being a doctor and highly intelligent and being a teenager. So as you can see, his friend Vinny tries to convince him that he can't make it in kind of basically the real world, in a teenage world, and have to do this job that other teenagers have to do. And Doogie finds that it's quite hard for him because of the way his brain works and the way he sees things and he thinks about things. He doesn't mesh well with this world that he really wants to be part of. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about asynchronous development. So the next part of what I want to talk about is what is the impact of this asynchronous development? I've done some research on the impacts of the asynchronous development and what it can cause. And I'm going to talk to you about gifted learners, and I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about what's called twice exceptional learners, and we'll talk about that a little bit when we get there. So I'm going to go over a few research articles that I've read. The first article that I'm going to go over is Examining the Fears of Gifted Children by Tippy and Burnham. In this, they talk about the fears that gifted children often have, and a lot of it is led because of that asynchronous development. They develop asynchronously, so they tend to criticize themselves. They have higher anxiety and depression because they struggle to fit in. So again, because of that asynchronous development, they want to be friends with their peers, they want to understand their peers, and yet they struggle. And they have been struggling most of the time since they were 5 years old. So often by the time that we get them in the middle school arena and they're 12 and 13 years old, they've been struggling for many years to find a place where they fit in. And so this anxiety and depression has been building. So then I looked at a second article, The Fears and Anxiety of Gifted Learners, Tips for Parents and Educators by Lamont. And this was actually in Gifted Child Today. In this article, Lamont says, gifted learners understand topics at a deeper level cognitively, such as death or divorce. So it hits them harder because they still have the emotional maturity of their age. So imagine all of these gifted learners who are looking at things that are going on in the media. They see all of the things that the adults are concerned about. They see protests that are going on. And so cognitively, they can already understand, because of the level where their brain is, they understand what meaning this has. They understand what causes these can come to. And so it strikes them harder. So now not only do they have the fears and anxieties of not fitting in with their peers and not being on that same level, but now they have all the fears and anxieties also of the world that is this huge place that has all these adult themes that maybe as a 12-year-old, they are not emotionally ready as a 12-year-old to deal with. They're seeing shootings at schools, and now they're coming to school concerned and afraid because they understand the impact of death. They truly understand the impact of death, whereas another 12-year-old may not truly cognitively get it. They get that someone goes away and doesn't come back, but they don't get it in a way that a gifted learner gets, that they would never see this person again for the rest of their lives. Sometimes a 12-year-old understands it as they go away and I don't see them for a while, and it doesn't click with them as much as it would with a gifted learner. So now they're weighed down with all of these fears and anxieties. So that's one of the impacts that asynchronous development can have on a gifted learner. The other impact I want to talk about is impacts that asynchronous development has on what we call twice exceptional gifted learners. So twice exceptional gifted learners are those that are gifted and they have a learning disability. So I looked at a third article. This one is called Beyond the Mask, Analysis of Error Patterns on the KTEA-3, which is a type of test for students with giftedness and learning disabilities. This was done by Audon Cross, Dulong Langley, Root, Gelber, Bray, Luria, Choi, Kaufman, Corville, and Pan. Lots of authors. What I thought was interesting about this is that all of the authors in this article said that the asynchronous development in the gifted learners that also have a learning disability actually tends to mask their learning disability, because gifted educators of gifted learners often know that they may not know the word asynchronous development, but they know that oftentimes these students struggle socially and emotionally, and sometimes they struggle to sit still and behave. So they just say, oh, well, that's a characteristic of being a gifted learner, and they don't realize that this could actually be a characteristic of a learning disability. It could be a characteristic of an emotional disability. It could be a characteristic of attention deficit disorder or anxiety. So what happens with these gifted learners that have a learning disability, they often don't get labeled either gifted or learning disabled, and they get forgotten and they get kind of put in the average category because their giftedness, they're able to use their high reasoning skills, and they're able to understand questioning, and they're able to behave enough, and they're able to use their cognitive levels to get them through as an average student, when really you were looking at a gifted student who had a learning disability. So just having a better understanding of asynchronous development and how this impacts our gifted students helps us to recognize what's going on with them more often. It helps us to provide them with services that they need in order to be successful, because they need services as a gifted individual to help with that social and emotional learning and to help with their cognitive abilities to help them continue to grow. But they also need them if they're gifted and they have a learning disability. So I looked up a little bit more research to kind of show you guys a little bit more research that's also available on the web. So if you don't want to necessarily read very heavy peer journal reviews, you can read some of this information. So the first website that I looked at was Psychology Today. I wanted to read a little section from each of these websites and what kind of stood out to me and some information. This really stood out to me because this definitely speaks to asynchronous development. And it says, many people assume that the brightest children in the classroom are the ones who are most able to pay attention, to sit still, to do their work, and to conform to the expectations of authority. They are the children who know how to act their age. At least, or even better, they display unusual maturity. They fit in, and they are the easiest students to teach. That's what people assume. Parents and teachers and others who live and work daily with these children know differently. We know that they actually are further behind socially and with maturity level oftentimes than their peers. So we often know to look for these traits and to check and see if these students are gifted. The next website I looked at is called Verywell Family, and they talk about asynchronous development as well. It says, recognize that gifted children may not get their emotional, social, and intellectual needs met by the same peers. This means they may be able to socialize to a degree with children their own age, but they also need to interact with gifted children, older children, or even adults. Parents should make every effort to provide these opportunities. So realize that your child may need to go to the college campus and talk to some college students about something that they understand on a cognitive level because they need that social interaction. Or maybe you need to find a safe social media group for them to be a part of, where they can talk to people if you need to monitor it, so that you can see them talking in like a think tank type situation, so that they can have those interactions with people that they can truly relate with. But don't keep them away from their peers also, because they need to learn how to do those interactions. The third website I looked at is Sengifted. And this one says, the gifted child, because of his asynchronous development, cannot identify with the peers he finds in the local school. He usually does not share their interests and may find their behavior puzzling, like with the bubble guppies. He may be unable to or unwilling to respond to his peers as they expect, or to conform to the school's expectations. He may not be ready to cope with this new environment, and thus he may be unable to complete a basic developmental task. If so, he will suffer social and emotional complications that can profoundly affect his future. And we see that this compounds as the child grows. So if this starts at a very young age, when you first put them in school at 5 years old and they're already not able to socialize with their peers, and then they struggle again the next year and the next year and the next year, and then before you know it, they're in the 5th grade and they're crying at their desk, and maybe oftentimes they're throwing tantrums. It's because they've never had that chance to move along developmentally, socially, and emotionally, because they haven't been able to go through those milestones with their peers. So again, this is just something as a parent and a teacher of a gifted learner that you need to keep up with. The last website I want to talk to you about for asynchronous development is actually from a mother of a gifted learner. And so this is called Raising Lifelong Learners. And she actually gives anecdotes, and I'm not going to read every single anecdote, but they are really cute, and they definitely showcase what asynchronous development is. But she says this that is very profound, and I think that this is what I want to kind of end with, and I want us to think about as we end. She said, "It is often said that gifted children are many ages at once. They are quite literally out of sync." So I want us to end with that thought, and I just want us to think about this asynchronous development of our gifted learners. So sometimes if you have that gifted student who is truly gifted mathematically, but maybe they didn't get to choose a gifted math class, and maybe they're in a class with students who really don't enjoy math, but they got put in a gifted English language arts class, and they're not really good at English language arts, but that's just what their schedule would allow. And they cry, or sometimes they throw a tantrum, or they pout because they're 12 and 13 years old. I just want us to realize that they're out of sync, and they need our help to find ways to socialize with their peers, to sit with the gifted students, for us to facilitate conversations, for us to show them how to interact with other people, and for us to give them a chance so that they can talk about the things that they are cognitively high in. So that's all the information that I have today for you about asynchronous development. I hope that as an educator or parent, you think about what this means. If you have any questions or any additional information for me, please be sure to put them in the comments below. Thank you so much for tuning in.